Samuel Harris was born in Warsaw around 1808. When he was only 11 years old, he heard about people journeying to England and decided to try his luck. Travelling alone across Europe, he arrived in Gravesend almost penniless and sought out a Jewish congregation in London, knowing that by custom they would help him. London synagogues operated a type of seed corn charity to assist destitute new arrivals. A collection would be made, providing enough money to purchase a peddler's box and some small goods to sell on the street. In Samuel's story, he relates that the Jews in Duke Street collected money to lay in some stock, thus enabling him to support himself. He was still less than 12 years old, but he was in business. He stayed in London for a week, but there were far too many others doing the same thing, so he set off walking towards Birmingham to take his chances there. The journey took him 3 weeks, and he sold nothing. Samuel had to spend his nights sleeping in the fields. But once in the Midlands, he began to do quite well, and spent many months travelling around the area, and on occasion even as far as Plymouth and the West Country. He described his appearance as follows: a pair of German boots to the knees, and a large black tassel to each of the tops, a pair of nankeen small clothes, black silk waistcoat, lead-coloured nankeen long coat down to my heels without any lapse or opening behind, and a hat with a small crown and a wide brim. Although he had no luggage with him, and at that age could hardly have been adorned with a beard, his appearance was sufficiently distinctive to attract a crowd of hundreds of boys, who followed him, mocking and jeering, all the way from Gravesend to Duke's Place, where the main synagogue was situated.
A generation after the emancipation of slaves throughout the British Empire, slavery had become a popular form of entertainment, not just to be enjoyed, but relished. 16 former slaves performed in Exeter, and an advertisement alerted local people of their arrival. A clever troupe of genuine Negro minstrels will give a series of entertainments at the Royal Public Rooms in this city, commencing this Friday evening. The talent of the company is highly spoken of by our Liverpool and Swansea contemporaries, at which places they have lately been performing. The troupe, who will also form a brass band, is under the direction of Mr. Sam Haig, whose success in the organisation of the minstrels justly supports the title given him of the Veteran Minstrel King. We should state that all the Negroes, prior to June 1865, were slaves in the southern American state of Georgia, and therefore the Exeter public will have the opportunity of witnessing a representation of the real life of the Negro on the plantations of America, and the natural characters of humour with which the black race are said to be endowed.
January 1825. A highly respectable meeting was held on Friday last at the Town Hall, Devonport, to consider the best means of alleviating the distress of numerous Spanish and Italian refugees who had been for some time past existing in a state of extreme misery. Mr. James White remarked that in Plymouth the number of refugees was about 700 or 800. He observed that their political opinions could have nothing to do with the present situation. He trusted they were actuated by a purer motive. By relieving the distress of these exiles, England would acquire more honour than if she had conquered a kingdom. He remarked that the efforts in the cause of charity which had been made by this little eye of the ocean surpassed those of all other kingdoms of the earth united. They were now imperatively called upon to assist the victims of tyranny, who have fled to England as their only refuge. It had been said that we have enough distresses of our own. He agreed with that remark, but observed that those of the natives of this country had a parish to apply to for relief, which these destitute exiles did not. He hoped that the English, by their conduct in this subject, would enable these oppressed people, if ever it should be their fortune to return in peace to their own country, to say in the language of Holy Writ, "We were strangers, and ye took us in, sick, and ye visited us."
Elphinstone Depot, Plymouth, was a government-sponsored emigration depot during the early Victorian era. During Elphinstone's lifetime, over 600,000 people passed through, leaving Britain for the colonies. This huge project was not accidental. There were networks of agents supported by the informal encouragement and sponsorship from the well-to-do local administrators, guardians, etc. The purpose was the exportation of Britain's poor. It was a massive colonial plan, reaching from national policymakers to local government. In Plymouth, as well as in other cities around Britain, the parish councils sponsored selected individuals to emigrate and leave the city. About 8 o'clock in the evening, we left Plymouth. The sun had set peacefully. The new moon, red with the hues of evening, hung just over Mount Edgecombe. Night was gathering around us, and all nature was so beautifully still that it appeared impossible that causes to make a man unhappy could exist in the country we were then quitting, perhaps forever. But I had only to remember the continued difficulties and harassment of mind we had experienced during those past 2 years to enable me most cheerfully to part with those of my family, then assembled on the beach to see the last of us. The next morning, Sunday, about 4 o'clock, we were awoke by the noise of the sailors on deck, hoisting sail and raising the anchor. And when I come on deck, at 8 o'clock, we were outside the breakwater, and had commenced our voyage.
Buffalo Bill visited the city of Plymouth on the 3rd of June 1904. The event was covered in the local newspaper. Buffalo Bill's visit to Plymouth, 3rd of June 1904. Today, Colonel W.F. Cody, known the world over as Buffalo Bill, gives 2 performances at Plymouth today in the course of his final tour of Great Britain with his unique exhibition of life in the Wild West. The location of the show at Exhibition Fields, Penycumwick, will make it readily accessible to residents of Plymouth, Devonport and Stonehouse. No fewer than 800 horses participate in the show, and 3 special trains are employed to convey them and their properties from place to place. By the addition of a number of genuine Japanese soldiers to his Wild West, Colonel Cody has acted only in response to a great public desire to see and learn something of these remarkable little men. Another new feature introduced this year is a darling leap through space by a cowboy on a bicycle. The really big feature among the new things introduced by the Colonel for this season, however, is Custer's Last Stand, or the Battle of the Little Bighorn. In this, over 300 men and horses participate, giving the most realistic representation of differing methods of warfare pursued by white and red man ever attempted, and making faithful representation of the massacre of Custer and 300 members of his regiment by a band of over 7,000 Indians, led by the famous old chieftain Sitting Bull, whose only son, Willie Sitting Bull, is now a member of Colonel Cody's company and is a daily participant in the mock battle, and he will be visiting Plymouth.